Good afternoon and welcome to the Committee on Housing for the Hawaii State Senate. It is Tuesday, January 27th at 1 p.m. in conference room 225. This meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. In the unlikely event that we have to end this hearing due to technical difficulties, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business at 1 p.m. Tuesday, February 3rd in this room 225, and a public notice will be posted on the legislature's website. We'll have a 1-minute time limit for testifier. If there are temporary technical glitches during your turn to testify via Zoom, we may have to move on to the next person due to time constraints. We appreciate your understanding and remind you that the committee has your written testimony. I'd like to welcome our committee members. Looks like we have a full house today. Our Vice Chair, Senator Hashimoto, our brand new member, Senator Elefante, and returning members, Senators Rhodes and Povella. Okay. We have 5 measures on today's agenda, the first of which is Senate Bill 2060 relating to the Rental Housing Revolving Fund, which authorizes HHFDC with the approval of the Director of Finance to transfer monies between the Rental Housing Revolving Fund and its subaccounts without legislative authorization. It authorizes the Director of Finance to transfer monies from the RHRF to its mixed income subaccount for FY 2026 to 2027 and appropriates funds. The chair will just note that for this bill and the next bill, they're both dealing with the Rental Housing Revolving Fund and the mixed income subaccount. They're both works in progress, and so we're gonna, the plan is to defer decision-making until Tuesday, February 3rd at 1 p.m. in this room 225. But we'll do the hearing now and we'll take the testimony now and ask any questions now so that we can air out some of the issues. All right, our first testifier for SB 2060 is HHFDC in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members, Team County, Executive Director of HHFDC, for testimony in support.
Thank you. Catholic Charities Hawaii in support.
Chang, sorry. Hello, Chair Chang, Vice Chair Hashimoto, members of the committee. I'm Betty Lamar from Catholic Charities Hawaii. We support rental housing for the workforce. We know that the workforce is struggling. We've supported Tier 2 funding in the past. However, we're also concerned that transferring money from the mixed or into the mixed income subaccount could weaken the ongoing efforts to produce the affordable rental housing for our lower income populations, under 80% of Ohio. So we urge the legislature to balance the housing needs of the higher income workforce with those lower income populations, many of whom are also in the workforce. And those families are really struggling not only with rent, but housing, not only with rent, but also with food and other costs. Our elderly are also increasingly vulnerable. So we just want to work together to ensure that both sides are a priority for the state. Homelessness or ending homelessness is really a top state priority also. And in order to do that, we need to focus also on that lower income population which are falling into homelessness greatly. Basically, we support this bill, but we also support the rental housing revolving fund as a proven tool for existing housing for that lower income population. We look forward to working together to ensure that the diverse needs of our state are all met. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to be clear, we'll have a 1 minute per testifier time limit. Our next testifier is Housing Hawaii's Future in support, followed by Roars and Cares in support. Are they present?
Present on Zoom, Chair.
They are or they're not?
Roar Cares is present on Zoom.
Okay, please proceed. You have 60 seconds.
Hello, Angela Melody Young. So I am getting my real estate license to become an agent. I already did my class, so I passed my test. And yes, so I just have a few like similar concerns as Catholic Charities about the lower income population. For example, I think in 2060, It's focused on tier 2 projects. So this is for teachers, nurses, firefighters. And within this classification, is there also going to be consideration for tier 1, which is lower income, special needs persons, and those within the disadvantaged circumstances demographic. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 2060?
Aloha, Chair. Matt Robert, HOU Collaborative. Sorry. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members, Matt Proberg, HOU Collaborative. We did submit written testimony late this morning on this measure. It may have not gone through. My apologies if it did not come in late, or if it did come in late. Hope you can see it. We do support this measure. The mixed income sub-account is an important account, and providing HHFDC a little more flexibility in accessing these funds will help allow us to achieve affordable housing more quickly and affordable renting more quickly for our local working families. Mahalo. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 2060? Okay, if not, members, any questions? Senator Elefante.
Request for Director Minakami. Good afternoon, Director. Could you provide the committee with your current balance of your rental housing revolving fund and your mixed income subaccount? Do you know those figures off the top of your head, or?
For the mixed income sub-account, there is no funding in the account right now.
Okay,
For the rental housing revolving fund, I'd like to note that there's a difference between encumbered funds versus committed funds. When we receive funds that are appropriated, we then award them to projects. The funds are not encumbered until the projects close on the loan. So to close on a loan, a project must receive building permits, insurance, everything must be in place. All the other lenders must be in sync before loan closing occurs. That typically takes about a year to sometimes 2 years after the commitment is made. So our uncommitted balance in the rental housing revolving fund is roughly about $100 million. And that will be awarded in the current year funding round. For context, we awarded about $300 million in 2025. So $100 million, yes, it's a lot of money, but there's much more demand for funds than what we have available right now.
okay. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions, members? Okay, our next bill today is Senate Bill 2063, relating to the Rental Housing Revolving Fund. It revises the mixed income sub-account within the Rental Housing Revolving Fund by modifying the priority list for project funding and adding new project priority criteria. It authorizes fund transfers between the mixed income sub-account without legislative approval, authorizes conveyance tax revenues deposited into the Rental Housing Revolving Fund to be transferred to the mixed income sub-account and appropriates funds. Our first testifier, like I said, again, the chair's inclination is to defer these two measures to Tuesday, February 3rd, to go over them, to make some further edits. Our first testifier is HHFDC with comments.
General testimony in support and offering comments.
Thank you. HPHA in support. Thank you. Housing Hawaii's Future in support. Stanford Car Development in opposition. Catholic Charities with comments.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Betty Larson with Catholic Charities Hawaii. We recognize the very real concern that the legislature has for our homeowners, or for our people who want to become a homeowner, but who are locked out of that market. We feel this is a very important issue. But however, that programs like the Dwelling Unit Revolving Fund, DIRF, or other programs, mechanisms like that would be a better way to address it. Encourage the legislature to separate the issues of for sale and rental housing, because we feel each one of them really demands a more focused approach and a different approach. We strongly urge them to keep the rental housing revolving fund for rentals and to look at another mechanism for the for sale initiative. This could create more initiatives for creativity, diverse types of housing, etc. So we urge your support for language in SB 2060 We urge you to defer this bill or to amend it to keep these two important issues separate. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we have roars and cares in support.
Angela Melody Young, testifying in support. So the new criteria considers rental and for sale housing projects that, at the minimum level to be revenue neutral and projects with a perpetual affordability commitment. But to cover those outside of the tier 2 classification, I think perhaps an amendment could be considered projects serving the public housing needs, the senior demographics, and those with disability. So then it would also be considerate of those from lower income families. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 2063? Okay, members, do we have any questions? Okay, we'll move next to Senate Bill 2062, relating to the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation, which establishes the Dwelling Unit Revolving Fund Equity Program as a permanent program to be administered by HHFDC, authorizes HHFDC to purchase equity in for-sale housing developments for qualified residents of the state using monies in the Dwelling Unit Revolving Fund to lower the initial purchase price, establishes equity repayment requirements. Before we begin the testimony, the chair also notes that we intend to defer decision-making on this bill to Tuesday, February 3rd, 1 p.m. in this room, and that we're also inclined to use this bill as the vehicle for the allocation of rental housing revolving fund and DERF projects, as well as amendments to the rental housing revolving fund mixed income subaccount as discussed in SB 2060 and 2063. And I'll go into further detail during after the recess for decision-making in this hearing. Okay, our first testifier is HHFDC in support.
Yes, Chair, we're in strong support of this measure. The equity pilot program was created to lower the barrier for buyers to attain home ownership. The pilot has been very successful. There are 83 units that have been committed. And of the $10 million which we are allowed to commit to the program, the pilot program, 7.6 million has been committed to projects. And also importantly, making this program permanent will allow us to pair our DERF loans with the equity pilot or with the equity program. This allows us to provide funding earlier in a project's capital stack. So basically, we contribute equity in the construction of projects, which is repaid with shared appreciation by subsequent buyers within the project. So it's a project that can move projects forward. It's a fiscally sound program also, which ensures that the state is paid back its investment with some appreciation.
Thank you. And I should also clarify, the chair wants to clarify that the next bill, SB 2069, the chair intends to use that as the vehicle for the amendments to the DERF equity program, both the contents of this bill as well as the next bill. All right, our next testifier is Office of Planning and Sustainable Development in support. Thank you. Land Use Research Foundation of Hawaii in support. Hawaii Appleseed in support. Housing Hawaii's Future in support. Stanford Car Development in support. Roar and Cares in support.
Not available on Zoom, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Okay, our next bill is Senate Bill 2069 relating to the Dwelling Unit Revolving Fund, authorizes HHFDC to use existing funds in the Dwelling Unit Revolving Fund for the Equity Pilot Program established under Act 92, Session Laws of Hawaii 2023. And again, the chair wants to note that we'll be using this as the vehicle for amendments to the DERF Equity Program in both this bill as well as the previous one. Our first testifier is HHFDC in support.
Yes, we stand in testimony in support.
Thank you. And Housing Hawaii's Future in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2069? Okay, if not, any questions, members? Okay, and we'll move now to SB 2070. our last bill today, relating to housing. It authorizes HHFDC to designate certain for-sale housing units as permanently affordable. It requires HHFDC to adopt rules to implement the permanently affordable for-sale housing program, repeals certain requirements as defining a qualified resident, removes certain restrictions applicable to the transfer of real property developed and sold under Chapter 201H, HRS. Our first testifier today is HHFDC in support.
Chair, Vice Chair, members, what this bill attempts to do is create a different way in which we manage our affordable units. Right now, for sale affordable units, they're subject to a 10-year buyback restriction, in which case, after 10 years, units can be sold at market rates. So we're looking at is a means to keep the units affordable, but also allow home buyers to gain meaningful equity so they move up the housing ladder. So under this proposal, there would no longer be a buyback restriction or shared appreciation. Instead, home buyers could sell the unit at any time, but the rate of appreciation would be tied to an index. And what we're looking at using is the long-term rate of appreciation for multifamily units on Oahu, which is about 4.5% per year. So if a home buyer wanted to sell their unit in 3 years, they could, but their price would be capped at 4.5% compounded appreciation per year. So that allows home buyers to gain equity in their units, but also keep the price relatively affordable. And I'll give you a real-life example. The Kapilani Residence project was completed in 2018. One-bedroom units there were sold for as low as $400,000. Today, those same one-bedroom market rate units, which are identical to affordable units, are selling for over $700,000. And in 2 years, all the affordable units can be sold as market units because the 10-year buyback period will have expired. Under this program, if someone wanted to sell their unit today, an affordable unit, the price would be roughly about $540,000. So that's substantial equity for the home buyer. They can move up the housing ladder, but it's still considerably more affordable than market pricing. So we're trying to strike a balance here of keeping units affordable, but allowing home buyers to gain equity. And it also deletes the provision that you have to be a first-time home buyer to participate in our programs, because the intent, again, is to allow home buyers to move up the housing ladder.
Thank you. And we'll have questions for you later. Thank you. Our next testifier is OPSD in support. Thank you. Stanford Car Development in support. Hawai'i Appleseed in support. And Housing Hawaii's Future in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on Senate Bill 2070? If not, are there any questions? Okay, Chair has questions for HHFDC. Actually, before we get into this bill, I wanted to clarify. So for the dwelling unit revolving fund equity program, how much funding would you be asking for this year?
We would just use our existing balance in DERF, so no additional funding.
You don't need any additional funding?
No.
Okay. Okay, so then moving up, back here. So these 10-year restricted units that you're talking about, are they mostly produced under the 201H-38 program?
That is correct, yes.
So do you need this bill? Do you already have the legal authority to designate these units as permanently affordable if you so choose in your negotiations with developers?
No, the 10-year buyback requirement is required.
In statute?
Yes.
You talked about eliminating the first-time homebuyer requirement.
Yes.
But to do so, you would actually remove the ban on all ownership of other residential property.
Yes.
Why is that necessary?
It's to be as flexible as possible. Again, the intent is, again, we're looking at creating an inventory of homes that is available for local households. So as long as you occupy the unit, I mean, that's the intent. It's an owner-occupant pool of units. So yes, you can own an interest in other property, but as long as you own and reside in the unit that is subject to the restriction, you should be able to live there.
So an owner of multiple residential properties and a landlord of multiple families would be able to live in these units.
Given the type of units that are built under 238, they're not typically not luxury units, so they're workforce units.
But legally speaking, they would
Legally
be
speaking,
prohibited.
yes. Yeah.
Why can't we just, is there anywhere else in the statute that requires first-time home ownership other than the provision prohibiting ownership of other residential real property?
That prohibits first,
That requires first-time home buyer status. Statute doesn't require first-time home buyer status, does it?
it's under the definition of, I think, what was a qualified resident, I believe.
No, but the qualified resident definition only requires that you own no majority interest in other residential real property. So if you take that out, well, so there's actually no if you own a lot of residential real property, if you sell it all before you buy one of these, you would still qualify.
Yes.
So there's never a first-time home buyer requirement.
I'd have to go back and look at that.
Okay, and when you say affordable, you mean 140% of AMI, is that correct?
Yes, our affordable units are up to 140% AMI.
Okay. How fast, what's the rate of appreciation of the 140% AMI figure on a yearly basis?
Well, that would depend on how much of a discount there was initially for the 140% AMI unit.
No, I just mean, how much do income levels rise in Hawaii?
Well, the rate of appreciation for real estate has been about 4.5%.
No, I mean incomes.
I don't know offhand.
Okay, so under this program, these units would in perpetuity have to be sold to other 140% AMI
No,
buyers.
after the first sale, they would be sold income unrestricted. The reason being, it becomes administratively very difficult for a home buyer who is just a regular person to try to find another person who meets a certain income qualification level. So we're thinking about administration of this restriction also. It gets very difficult if you start placing AMI restrictions on, just regular homeowners.
But so let's say you buy the home and then you sell it 20 years down the line. The maximum price you could sell it for would be the original price plus the appreciation, the 4.4% per year.
Yes.
And if at that time, it's very expensive, that's totally fine. And it can be sold to anyone. If at that time, let's say incomes stagnate, and let's say the 4.4 keeps going up. And so as a result, in 20 years in the future, what was originally a 140 AMI unit is now 200 AMI. So you could sell it to somebody making 200 or even 1,000% of AMI.
Well, it still would be, the market would dictate how high prices can get. So if income stagnate, that probably means prices would stagnate also.
But in the example you gave, I think you would probably admit that incomes have not risen from, by 75% since 2018, right?
Well, yes, and that shows how much of a discount these units were sold to initially. There was a large gap between the affordable prices versus the for sale pricing in 2018 when these units were sold.
What if instead of tying it to real estate appreciation, what if it were tied to income growth?
That's probably quite a bit less than, I'm guessing that's probably 3% or less. And the difficulty in that is I'm not sure if home buyers would accept that when they're looking at purchasing a unit. And I'm not sure if developers would accept that when they're planning units, so they would not use 21838. There has to be some, I would say, predictable rate of appreciation that home buyers can count on.
But they're already less attractive than the example you gave, the Central, where that appreciated much faster than 4.4% per year.
Which example?
So you're creating a new category of units. There's an existing category of units that were initially affordable at 140% of AMI, but then after 10 years can appreciate to whatever the market can bear, which can be very high. It can double, the price can double. So those are more attractive than these units where the appreciation is strictly limited on an annual basis.
Yes, for those buyers who wait out the 10 years, they do receive a one-time windfall. And those units are lost to the affordable inventory. But there are also many buyers who don't want to commit to living in a unit for 10 years. And for that reason alone, they don't consider purchasing an affordable unit. That's been a concern by developers, and for them, it's the velocity of sales. How quickly can they sell units so they can start construction? And what we hear from developers and home buyers is that committing to like a studio or one bedroom for 10 years, that is a tough sell.
Are there a lot of these unsold units in 21H-38 projects?
There are, it takes a while for them to sell. And before, there's a certain number of units that must be sold before a developer can break ground. So it does take some time. Can you provide the committee with information about the sales velocity of these restricted units under existing 21H-38 projects? We can look at that.
Okay, and just, I think this is an important distinction, the distinction between income and property price appreciation, because I think it's important in a lot of ways, but if there's a program that's called the Permanently Affordable For Sale Housing Program, I think people will think that it will be permanently affordable. And at least tied to some AMI level. And you're proposing a program that's not tied to any AMI level.
Yes, and again, that's to allow equity growth because that is important for home buyers when they're deciding whether or not to buy a home.
But maybe the name of this program is.
Or we
should be
could change the
changed
name
to a permanently local for sale housing program.
Right, a local workforce housing program.
Go back to the definition of qualified resident under 21H-32. Where else is that used, that definition? It's used throughout your statute, isn't it? Chapter 21H.
There is quite a bit of reference to the qualified resident definition, yes.
So by amending that definition, you would open up all of your programs.
So again, this is a mindset shift where we're looking at our program not just being for, so-called first-time buyers or those who don't have property, but to basically open it to residents of Hawaii, to local residents, to expand the reach of our programs.
Well, what would you say to someone who says, there's so many people who can't even afford one home, and you're opening up all of your programs to landlords of multiple homes? Why can't they just live in one of their units?
I think in most cases, those landlords would live in their units. Again, the types of units that we produce under 21H, these are workforce affordable units. So they are not luxury units.
Sure.
Senator Favela.
Yeah. So the understanding that I guess people is going to be listening is that we try to put residents that cannot buy, cannot afford all of these things in homes. Then you're saying that if we lock people down for 10 years, people are not going to buy the units. Is that what you were saying? If we lock people for 10 years, they're not going to buy the unit?
Some will, but there are others who will not.
Okay, so the ones that don't like buy, they probably own houses already. Because I can give you an example. No, let me give you an example. No, tell me no. because the program worked. Because I can tell you right now, Frank Fossey did that in my community more than once. And before they even built the houses were sold. But they had to not sell the house for 10 years. They could open up the market after 10 years. They can sell them whatever the market at the time, never have restrictions. But for 10 years, they had to live in the house. And you know what? Those houses was being sold very quickly because it was affordable, it was reasonable, and they could move in a multifamily. So you telling me that all that would drastically change within the last 20, 25 years? People don't want to be locked into something like that? What they're doing on Hawaiian homes, they're locked into a 65-year or 100-year lease. There's plenty of scenarios that there are. It's just that you need to make it available, you need to make it affordable, and make it reasonable, that people will. You know, like the saying, if you build it, they will come. They'll come. But the standards of what you guys are trying to do, instead of just trying to work with this, you're just saying that these guys, you're going to open them up to guys who own multiple houses. Even if you say local market, right? You say to the local market, right? You still going to have people that own multiple properties, and they're going to just get around the system and move into that house because you got to be occupied. You think they're not circumventing and doing that now? They are. They are, because the ones that have is always going to have, the have-nots not going to have. So having this lock-in and what Senator Chang was saying, it doesn't, the program doesn't sound of what is the thing being listed for. Because how are you going to justify the prioritize? So for me, I don't own a unit, I don't own a house, but then I cannot compete with the person that owns home because they have equity already. You see what I'm saying? So this should be, and I thought that was something that you guys are providing as our government agency to help people. Workforce housing, same thing. Because I don't know anybody that, a police officer or workforce housing in the workforce own 5, 6 units. They're looking to buy the first unit. And most times they want to stay there more than 5 to 10 years. So why don't you give that, why don't you, see, that's what I'm not understanding. When you're dialoguing with Senator Chang, what I don't understand is you're just writing it off with not any numbers. You're saying that we're not going to be able to sell those units if we lock them into 10, but then you don't come with any numbers or statistics.
No, I'm not saying that we currently have a 10-year buyback and units are being sold.
Right?
So yes, I'm not saying that it doesn't work. It
Okay.
clearly does.
Okay. But you're saying it's hard to sell.
It's harder to sell, yes.
Okay, so
especially
what
in
is
a-
the statistics and the number of these units that is being sent out there? What is the percent of the, not anybody else, what is the percent of the struggling of selling these houses?
And it depends also, if for a single-family home, yes, someone could commit to 10 years easily, but compared to a studio, that's much harder.
Yeah, well, the only reason why I'm saying that, it's kind of hard because when you're saying that, I'm still not justifying for it. The only reason why I'm saying that is because he worked in my community in Gentry. Yeah, I know plenty of guys who bought their first home. It was a studio. They sold the studio for a lot more money they could put down into a new home, but they was locked in for 10 years. And those units, especially with the townhouses in my community, Ocean Point and Gentry, they sold quick, really quick. Because that's what they're staring on, that this is what they can buy. They know in 10 years, maybe they're gonna be a little bit more, and they can resell that house and probably move on. But some people, I cannot get the numbers. Would be good if you can just probably maybe give us some numbers on the statistics on how much of these houses are being left on the market because they never signed a contract or locked in for a 10-year buyback.
But again, the 10-year restriction is only coming up because we're looking at not having a 10-year restriction and having a permanent restriction.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Senator. Further questions, members? Senator Elefante.
Yeah, so is my understanding of this read, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director, would there still be a 10-year provision in it, or would the removal of a 10-year
would-
at the time of resale?
There would not be a 10-year restriction. The current units would be grandfathered in to the
Okay.
10-year program, but going forward, the new program would apply.
Which would be tied to the 4.4% appreciation or index
Yes.
that they could sell at,
Yeah,
and then eliminate the 10-year restriction
Yes.
on the resale.
that's correct.
Yeah, versus currently now, at 10 years, they could sell it and it'd be open in the market,
Yes,
and we would lose that.
yes.
So it can kind of be a little misleading, because if we're talking about designated as permanently affordable, there's sort of a dichotomy there.
Okay, we can change the title to workforce housing, permanently workforce.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So Director, I mean, we did pass SB 2066 in 2024, Act 38, which provides the alternate pathway to 201H-38, which is pretty similar to what you're proposing now, except that that alternate pathway required all of the project's units to be exclusively for qualified residents. And now you're saying only 50% of the units need to be for qualified residents. So I guess what you're saying is have any developers done projects under that alternate pathway, Act 38?
No, there have not been any projects under that alternate.
And you believe that reducing the threshold to 50% would interest developers?
It likely would. I think the concern is that developers do rely on some amount of investors or non-owner occupants to sell their projects.
Will this new program be a mandatory program? You just said that the previous iteration.
It would be a mandatory program, yes.
So the previous iteration would go away. That would no
Yes.
longer be an option?
Yes.
The previous program is the most successful housing stimulus program in Hawaii's history.
I don't know if the 10-year buyback, I don't know if you call that a successful stimulus program.
Well, more units have been built under 201H-38 than any other
Yes, under
program.
238, but not under I don't think the buyback program is a stimulus program.
But it's a component of a very successful program.
Yeah.
Have you received feedback that changing the terms of the program in this manner would be broadly acceptable to the market?
We have spoken to developers, and a key aspect is that the rate of return has to be high enough so that buyers will accept this. If it's set too low, we've seen what happens when the rate is set too low. For example, there's this Sky at Ala Moana project where the rate was set at 1% for 30 years. From what I heard, there were just a handful of units that were sold. So the city had to go back and revise that restriction. So we know it has to be something meaningful, because when buyers are committing to a unit, they expect some appreciation. They want to move up the housing ladder. This is their vehicle to move the housing ladder.
Vice Chair Hashimoto.
So Dean, how long do you think you need to prove that it's working? 5 years, 8 years?
I would say give it at least 5 years.
Okay. Then we can see if it's a good policy move. Because right now we're just we can take in the information and see what people are saying, what will stimulate it, but we don't really know yet, right? For sure.
So it could be an optional pilot if you wish.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you proposing to amend the existing 201H-38 program? Or is this-
Not under this proposal.
Why would you put in a separate section?
Rather than just put this under 201H-38,
Yeah.
I suppose it could. It just gets very long, 201H-38.
Also, the bill says the corporation may designate a for-sale housing unit as permanently affordable, so it doesn't seem like it's written to be mandatory.
That could be changed to a shall.
You would want it to be a shall.
It would be the program going forward to replace the 10-year buyback program.
Okay, so you would be fine with it being placed under 201H-38 directly?
Off the top of my head, I don't see an issue with that.
Okay. Okay, that's all the questions that I have. Members, any final questions for the director? Thank you for the discussion. Okay, so members, we're gonna go into a brief recess, and then we'll come back for decision-making on one bill. Good afternoon. The Committee on Housing is now back for decision-making. So the only bill that we will be DMing on today will be Senate Bill 2069. All of the other bills, Senate Bill 2060, Senate Bill 2063, Senate Bill 2062, and Senate Bill 2070 will be deferring decision-making until Tuesday, February 3rd, 1 p.m. in this room 225. And again, the chair is inclined to consolidate the rental housing revolving fund mixed income subaccount bills into Senate Bill 2062. Chair's inclination will be to require that rentals be primarily at or below 140% of AMI, to expressly include any and all forms of financing, including but not limited to equity, credit enhancement, and collateral, to prioritize perpetual affordability, to give HHFDC the power to transfer funds into and out of the mixed income subaccount, and also to include a list of projects to be funded, primarily rental and for sale TOD projects. But that, like I said, will be deferred until Tuesday, February 3rd at 1 p.m. in this room. Okay, so for the bill that we are going to be decision-making on today, Senate Bill 2069, the chair's recommendation will be to pass this measure with amendments. We'll be inserting the contents of Senate Bill 2062 with the following additional amendment from HHFDC to amend Section 201H-B, lowercase b e. A buyer shall repay to the corporation's purchased equity and equity percentage share of the net appreciation in the property, if any, in the buyer's unit upon the earliest of any of the following occurrences. In the committee report, we'll also note that HFDC will not be requesting any funding. Any questions or discussion?
I don't know if they're not requesting any funding, but we're removing the cap of the funding.
Right, but they're not requesting new funding.
That's right.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Okay, if not, so for Senate Bill 2069, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair votes aye.
Members, SB 2069, passed with amendments. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Elefante.
Aye.
Senator Rhodes.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Aye.
Chair recommendations adopted.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the agenda, and there being no further business, this hearing is adjourned.